On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, we're going to dive into the Oklahoma City Thunder mixing up their rotation so much. What are they experimenting with? What are they trying to gain? Plus, SGA continues to live at the free throw line. We'll dive into that and more coming up on today's Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and editor-in-chief over at thunderousintentions.com, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're talking about the Thunder and their experimentations with their rotations, as that is a hot-button topic for every Thunder fan. We're also going to dive into should the NBA overhaul their replay system, and SGA just living at the free throw line, and more from that New Orleans Pelicans game. But today's show is brought to you by SweatBlock. Get your sweating under control with SweatBlock. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try SweatBlock. SweatBlock, you can save 20% with the promo code LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com. Also available at Amazon. So check that out right now. So let's start with the rotations. That's been kind of the biggest question mark of this whole season, I feel like. I think that the thing that the Thunder get questioned the most on is, why are they playing this guy? Why aren't they playing this guy? What are these rotations? And so when you're asking those things, I understand why. It's because it's strange, it's because it's unconventional, but I think that the better answer than that, than those blanket statements, would be that the roster finally caught up to OKC, and not in a bad way. Like, there was a weird narrative in the summertime was like, oh, the Thunder have too many guys. They don't have too many guys. Because here's what's going to happen. The roster caught up in the sense of it went from being a dreadful roster 2 years ago to a bad roster last year, and now you have a roster top to bottom with guys that you care about. That's the difference. So I get questioning it. I get kind of looking at how wacky it is. But to me, there's a fine line to walk, because I'm starting to see people, question Mark and his ability to coach. It's none of that. What I mean by the roster catching up, there are players on this roster that we all think should play more. For me, it's Aaron Wiggins. I think that Aaron Wiggins should play more. But this roster is now deep enough to have our guys. There's simply more players to care about, and not everyone can play each night. Think about last year. There just weren't enough players on the roster to care about. You go up and down last year's roster, and let's say Poku has just a bad outing to start the game. Let's say Poku just isn't physical enough, which has been the big thing in the games in which he has not played a ton of minutes this year. Who are you going to turn to? Gabriel Deck? Why? Who cares? Mamadi Diakite? Who cares? Like, those are not guys that the Thunder are invested in long term. There's no longer Rob Edwards, Jalen Horde, Scotty Hopson, Ty Jerome. Like, there's no longer these guys, Tal Maledon, that like there is no future development in. There's no future investment in. And so when you replace Paul Watson with a lottery pick, of course we think that the lottery pick should be playing more. I mean, you think about the draft class. Of course, Chet Holmgren's out for the season. It doesn't count. But Ousmane hasn't played a ton. J. Will hasn't played a ton. And J-Dub's been the only one that has played a lot for the Thunder. You brought in 3 lottery picks. Of course, one's out for the season, doesn't count. So 2 lottery picks. And only one of them is seeing significant minutes. That's how deep this roster is compared to just last year. Not to mention the beginning of all of this. Not to mention 2020, whenever you didn't have Josh Giddey or anyone. You had Moses Brown and Tony Bradley and George Hill, all these guys that had no significance in the future of this organization. And so this roster now is 17 guys deep of players that you think and can talk yourself into having a great stake in the rest of this rebuild. Maybe you can't talk yourself into Isaiah Joe, so that's one. And maybe you don't want to see the Thunder play Darius Bazley, so that's two. Well, Isaiah Joe, of course, his minutes fluctuate, and people actually do want to see him play a lot, right? And then Darius Bazley played 5 minutes. 5 minutes in this game against New Orleans. So he's not been getting consistent minutes. And then maybe with how bad Kenny Hustle's playing this year, you might want to get off the Kenny Hustle bandwagon. That's at most 3 players in which you can gripe with who Mark is playing versus not playing. The end of the day, this is just the roster catching up. And so how does this get solved? How is this not a bad thing? Well, because sadly, not everyone will pan out. Like my guy, Aaron Wiggins, I want to see him play. He's 5-0 as a starter. When he does play, he's always a positive impact. I want to see him get opportunity. There are other players who the Thunder have just invested more in, like Trey Mann, who's going to get minutes ahead of him. Right? But the way that this all gets solved is not everyone's going to work out. The guys you invest in might just not be good. And so some guys will leap up. They're going to take their spot. They're going to claim their minutes. They're going to get a stronghold on their rotational spot. And then some guys just won't work out. And that won't be this year. Of course, Shai and Giddey, those echelon of players on this roster are not in this conversation right now. I'm talking about the roster spots that are fluctuating in minutes. They will fluctuate, I think, all year long. I don't think that you're going to see them get defined this year. But next year, over the summer, at the All-Star break next year, then it will start to be more true and defined whenever guys do or don't take their leap. But that's really all this is. This is just how rebuilding is done whenever you get all these fun young pieces. Whenever you have 2 straight draft classes of 4 players. And of those 4 players, right, from each class, making 8, 7 of them are available to play. They're healthy enough to play. They could be on the court right now. But even they are not getting that opportunity. And those are who you've invested draft picks in, those precious, precious draft picks. That just goes to show that all this mixing and matching, all these rotational experiments, these are born from you having a better roster. So before you go each and every night and criticize Mark and talk about how this coaching staff doesn't know what they're doing, well, they get the guys to play really good defense. And that came back against New Orleans after a bad defensive stretch, the worst of Mark's career, whenever you're factoring in every player, right? So that came back after the worst stretch of Mark's career. He gets the guys to play hard all 3 years that he's been here, which is hard to do. Look around, right? The Thunder have never finished bottom 3 in the NBA, and the teams that do finish bottom 3 haven't just finished there. They've been embarrassing. They've gone on 22-game losing streaks. They've set records for how terrible they are. Thunder had one historically bad night in Memphis, but other than that, they go out there, they play hard, and they typically don't embarrass themselves, which is hard to do in this stage. So before you go and criticize Mark, I would love to know who you would like to see him play over whom. Because there's just simply not enough minutes to go around. So if it is Aaron Wiggins, like it is for me, who are you replacing? Because I can throw out these names, right? I can say, Trey Mann's been in a slump. I would like to see Wiggins play over Trey Mann. Well, yeah, he's in a slump, but that's, a top 20 pick of your organization that you're trying to develop and trying to work through. Okay, I'd like to see him play over Kenny Hustle. Well, that's one of your, veterans. And that one everyone can talk themselves into, right? Or Pokusevski. Well, no, Pokusevski's been playing really good, and you want to see him continue to develop. Lou Dort, he's one of your higher paid players after this extension kicks in. When this extension, of course, kicked in this year, when you're thinking all this through, it's tough to find the holes in where you want to put these players in the rotation. We all want them to play more. We all want to see Wiggins. I see a Joe after that hot streak, which he's cooled off from a bit, obviously. We want to get our hands on Ousmane Dieng. We haven't seen, right? Jay will a ton in the NBA, like hardly at all. And this roster is just too crowded to see a ton of Lindy Waters or Eugene Morui. And it's difficult to find minutes on this team whenever you don't have Chet Holmgren for the year, whenever Mike Muscala's been sidelined for a few games and will be out for another week or two, and before you cash in on this draft pick this year, which no matter what the record is, it's going to be a good draft pick. This is a loaded draft class. You're going to find a really good player no matter where your pick's at. That's the type of competitive environment. That's the type of competitive atmosphere that the Thunder are creating. The Thunder are finding. And so you can't reward bad minutes all the time. So whenever Pokusevski gets pulled after a mistake, and you hate it because you want to watch Poku, right? We all want to watch Poku. He's fun. He's been playing great this year. He deserves some more leash. I understand that. But you now can have that trade-off of not rewarding a lack of, physicality, teaching him a lesson, so to say, because you're going to guys who are still, focusing on and primarily being developmental options for you. Whereas last year you'd be going to Paul Watson, who's a 28-year-old two-way guy that no one can envision playing in the NBA even this year. So I think that's where the big difference comes in the way the rotations are handled this year versus in years past, and why it's gotten to the point where it's so incredibly heightened and it's so funky and unconventional and all that jazz. That's kind of where I think that we see all this unfold. And that's been the vision, I guess, for the Thunder and compiling all these assets. But today's show is brought to you by SweatBlock, folks. SweatBlock is incredible. We all live in, around Oklahoma, wherever you live at. Doesn't matter. You can have a sweating problem, but especially here in Oklahoma. I have a sweating problem. You don't want that sweat to derail your everyday life. A big meeting, a big event, a big date, whatever the case is. You do not want the sweat, the pit stains, the shiny forehead, the uncomfortable feeling you get in your skin whenever you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, can they tell that I'm sweating? Can they see this drop of sweat fall off of my eyebrow? Oh no, oh no, oh no. Whenever you get that feeling, you want to avoid that. And the way to avoid that is by going to SweatBlock. You can go to sweatblock.com and use the code LOCKEDON for 20% off. You can also go to Amazon and find it there. You can go, take your shower, apply this SweatBlock on your problem areas, whether it's your armpits, your forehead, whatever it is for you, and it can keep you dry for up to 7 days. So check it out today. SweatBlock is there for you. Sweatblock.com, promo code LOCKEDON, and Amazon.com as well. We are back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. So we talked about the rotations. Now let's talk about the game. Chet Holmgren out, Lindy Waters out, Jalen Williams out, Eugene Morui out, Mike Muscala out, Isaiah Joe and Wiggins, two do not play coaches' decisions, which we kind of led with on the show. And then the Pelicans didn't have, McCollum or Ingram or Nance, but that's kind of typical night in and night out of the NBA. You're not going to play a team at full strength. It doesn't take away to me from how hard this team fought against New Orleans and how good they played defensively. Obviously, the Pelicans are much better whenever McCollum and Ingram and Nance play, but still, that's just kind of the price of doing business in the NBA. The Thunder, while we're speaking about kind of the rotational stuff, their starters were actually the same as their minute getters, which we have been following all season long. The five starters, SGA, Josh Giddey, Lou Dort, Pokusevski, JRE, were the same five most minute getters in this game. Let's talk SGA first, though, as we always do, typically always do. SGA scores 31 points on a career high in free throws. And I think that this is just another way to exclaim his stardom. SGA struggled in this game. This was not a pretty SGA game. 31 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 7 turnovers, 7 for 21 shooting, 1 for 6 from 3. He shot 16 of 18 at the free throw line. 16 of 18. This is the best job any team has ever done defending SGA this year. And a lot of you said the Memphis game, which box score-wise, the Memphis game was also not good. But the Memphis game felt more like it was a sluggish, checked-out Shai game than the Memphis Grizzlies just dominating Shai on defense. Herb Jones had his way with Shai a lot of the times. But you still have to foul him. Even whenever Herb Jones plays electric defense on Shai and is praised and given props by everybody around the NBA, even those of us in Oklahoma City. Plays incredible. Shai is still going to find a way to get his and manufacture his fouls and manufacture points and manufacture offense. And part of it is he's just too good, because if you weren't fouling him, then he'd just shoot better from the floor, right? But get ready. Get ready, because the backlash is coming. This is soon going to start to catch on around the league. Shai's going to go from, oh, wow, look at Shai, first 10 games averaging 31 points. Oh, wow, look at Shai, first 20 games still playing at MVP level. This is soon going to go to, oh, wow, look at Shai. He's getting 14 free throws a night. And that's soon going to tick off the rest of the league. That's soon going to make other fan bases not like Shai. But I'd ask of you, what superstar doesn't do that, especially when they're having an off night, doesn't get to the line? But Shai will soon join the likes of Luka, the likes of prime James Harden, the likes of every superstar, where they get these superstar calls, they're out there living at the free throw line, and fans kind of start to not necessarily discredit them, because the way that Shai gets fouled isn't necessarily a way you can discredit, right? It's not the James Harden looping of the arm, jumping into you in his prime, where that would just frustrate the heck out of anybody. But so not necessarily discredit SGA, but of course, gripe about it, especially whenever you play on the road. So get ready, that's going to come. But Herb Jones did great, and the Pelicans are so well equipped for defending guys like Shai. Like that's just superstars in general, because Herb Jones is a really good on-ball defender. Jose Alvarado's a pesky guy that if your handles are not crisp, he's going to pick your pocket at least once and get deflections, as he did in this one. And I think that the game was very fun to watch it come down to Shai and Herb Jones on the Thunder's end of the ball. I thought it was interesting that Mark did not call a timeout whenever the Thunder regained possession with like 8 seconds left. He just let SGA go down the floor and try to take on Herb Jones, and obviously that ended up in the controversial charge call, where one ref called it a block, one ref called it a charge. The last 2-minute report called it a block. Me personally, in real time, I thought it was a charge. Like I tweeted it out. I thought it was a charge. I thought it was a good call by the official that had a charge. Obviously, the last 2-minute report did not agree. That's kind of how charges go. But I thought it was interesting to let SGA kind of just go there by Mark, and I liked it. I liked that decision. In the past, Mark has called a timeout in that spot, and there was one game I remember. I'll have to go back and find this before the next podcast or whatever. But there was one game where there was kind of a miscommunication on, from Shai looking at the sidelines in one game in this kind of same scenario. Do you want me to go? Or do you want to call a timeout? Mark looking at Shai like, do you want to go? And then they just kind of mess everything up in the sense of, I think that Shai took a dribble and then Mark called the timeout, so they couldn't advance the ball. And so Mark just let his star go at it and turn this into an ISO game. And when you have one of the most electric and the best rim finisher for a guard in the NBA, I don't see a problem with that. I don't see a problem with that at all. And, the only counter argument to that would be that Mark historically in these last 3 years has been elite at out of timeout plays and slob plays, and Josh Giddey, of course, is an elite weapon as an inbounder off of these as well. So maybe that's kind of your argument for taking the timeout, but I didn't mind that philosophy at all for the Thunder keeping SGA just in rhythm. Now, does the NBA replay system need to get overhauled? To me, I like the NBA replay system as it is, except for the fact that if you win a challenge, you don't get it back. You get your timeout back, but you don't get your challenge back. And I think and I hope that we're trending towards that changing, to where at least if you win your first one, you get your second one back. Because this is something that hurt both teams. Both teams won their first challenge and had another play soon thereafter where they could have challenged again and won it, but they didn't have a challenge left. There was nothing they could do. They didn't have their challenge left anymore because they challenged a play previously. And so, to me, I would like to see the Thunder and every other team, of course, get their challenge restored if they hit on their first challenge. I think that would be the simplest and best way to go about this. I think that Lu Dort played well also. 14 points, 5 assists, 2 steals, 40% from the three-point line, 46% from the floor. He had one bad play on defense, which was very surprising, obviously, because he's a defensive menace. But he was defending Trey Murphy on a rotation, but JRE was kind of at the top of the key already, leaving Zion open for three in the slot, which I think it confused Dort on why JRE was not already shuffling towards Zion, but JRE was kind of thinking, I'm going to wait till Lou Dort gets here, and then I'm going to go to Zion because I don't really care if Zion hits the three, and I'm sagged off enough to where if he tried to cut off the catch, I could cut him off. And then that just, I think, threw everything out of whack. I don't know that for sure. I have to ask one of them the next home game, but I think that's kind of what happened just by looking at it. And then so Murphy passes to Zion in the slot, who's wide open. JRE, of course, rotates perfectly right in front of Zion at the three-point line, who the Thunder have been leaving open at the three-point line all game. But Lou, just instead of ignoring Zion, he still shuffled over to Zion, and now there's two guys on Zion at the three-point line, and Murphy's wide open for three. Zion makes the pass back to Murphy. Three-point shot goes up. Bang. 71-60 is the lead at that time. Thunder obviously made a comeback from that spot, but it was just interesting to see like the one time that there's been glaring miscommunication from Lou Dort defensively. I think that there was honestly a category in which Lou Dort was one of his better games of his time. I think this is one of the better games for Lou Dort of using his body to create separation at the rim and using his body to be under control while doing that, though. It's not just barreling in and swinging his elbows around. He used it to stay under control within himself, but also gain that distance to make the layup at the rim. So I thought that was really good from him as well. Coming up, let's talk Pokusevski. Let's talk about how this game went down as a whole. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at ExpressVPN. This is our good friends over at ExpressVPN. Protects your privacy and security online. Folks, it's something you might not know beyond that, though. Like, we all know ExpressVPN and VPNs from Express can protect your privacy and secure yourself online. But an added bonus to that is that you can use ExpressVPN to unlock movies and shows that are only available in other countries. Maybe you've just simply run out of stuff to watch on Netflix. This will change your world. ExpressVPN allows you to binge The Office on UK's Netflix. You can see the UK version of The Office. It's so simple to do. You just sign into Netflix, fire up that ExpressVPN app, change your location to UK, refresh your Netflix tab. That's it. Boom. Now you have the UK Netflix and, of course, accompanied with The Office UK. ExpressVPN lets you control where you want sites to think you are located. You can also choose from almost 100 different countries. So just imagine all the Netflix libraries you can go through. If you love Korean dramas, use ExpressVPN to make sure you get to see all of the South Korean Netflix shows with your Netflix subscriptions. Make sure you check them out today. It's not just Netflix, though. ExpressVPN works with any streaming service, Hulu, YouTube, anything that you have streaming-wise, you name it, literally anything. There are hundreds of VPNs out there, but the reason I use ExpressVPN is to watch shows because it's ridiculously fast. There's never any buffering or lag. You can stream in HD, no problem. ExpressVPN also works with your devices like your phones, your media consoles, smart TVs, and more, so you can watch whatever you want on the big screen or on the go. Make sure you go right now and get access to hundreds of new shows. Go to expressvpn.com/lockedon. That is expressvpn.com/lockedon. expressvpn.com/lockedon to learn more. We are back on the Locked On Thunder podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Thunder your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. For your next listen, go check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, giving you everything you need to know about the sports world in under 30 minutes or less, beyond the box score and behind the scenes. Locked On Sports Today. Let's talk Poku and throw in JRE as well and everyone else. The Thunder did a really good job defending Zion. He had 23, still a good game, but he could have gone for 30, as we've seen other players do in this recent stretch of games. But one of the more impressive factors is he only had one foul, or one free throw attempt. And of course, some of that's on the officiating, and then some of that's on the Thunder playing good defense. Zion, after the game, said he gives the Thunder a lot of respect for playing without fouling. That could have been just to save money, of course, but whatever the case is there. I thought that Poku did fine on Zion, obviously, especially only having him have 23 points. And Poku also hit 3 for 5 from 3, and we're still inching closer and closer to a larger and larger sample size. I feel like Poku's three-point shooting could be for real. 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal. 11 points, 27 minutes of action, and he was rewarded for his minutes there. Like he played more physical, he played as good as you can against Zion, and he got rewarded for it. This is the reward for living up to the expectations of you playing physically. Ousmane Dieng also had a solid 11 minutes of action. Ousmane Dieng, of course, has been with the Blue for almost a month, it feels like, but he got back against Houston, played a little bit there. That was the second night of back-to-back for him as well. The Blue played on Friday just like the Thunder did. And then in this game, he played a really productive 11 minutes of action. 2 for 3 from 3, 3 rebounds, 2 blocks, a steal, 6 points. Also, J-Dub showed a lot of promise on both ends, 8 points, 6 rebounds, a block, an assist. Played really good defense in this one, did J-Dub, but Ousmane played well as well. And then just the overall game, the Thunder got their defense back. Like, this was one of the best defensive games that you've seen from the Thunder in the last month. 105-101. OKC was once down 13 points, but they started out strong. They started out good. The Thunder once led by 8 points, 4 times tied, 9 lead changes. OKC was out rebounded by 2. The Thunder were dominated in the points in the paint, 60-36. But the Thunder won second chance points, 22-14. Fast break points was only decided by 1 in New Orleans' favor. Here's the big kicker that's been an issue for the last 2 weeks or so. OKC commits 3 less turnovers, yet the Pelicans cash in more on turnovers. The Pelicans get 17 points off of turnovers. The Thunder only get 13. That's a glaring issue that's been happening game over game over game. The Thunder are creating these turnovers at a high clip, which is awesome. They've got to find ways to make them count. They've got to, and they just haven't so far. The Thunder shot 37-31, 91. The New Orleans shot 44-28, 90. Not a good shooting night from OKC besides from the free throw line, but still it was good enough to keep it close and keep it muddy. The Thunder did cover the 5.5 point spread, and the MVP of this game is SGA. So that is your recap for the Pelicans, plus a deep dive into what is happening with the rotations. Let me know your opinion on these rotations from Mark in the comment section on YouTube. Subscribe over there. Subscribe. Like it, watch it, comment it. Also on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.